Bryan Clark is a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute and an expert in naval operations joining us tonight. Welcome to the program, Bryan, as always. I want to start with the purpose of these naval exercises, the BALTOPS in the Baltic Sea. What really is the purpose?
So BALTOPS has been around for about 50 years now. So it's really intended, it was originally intended to try to improve the ability of NATO to push back on Russian aggression in at least that area of the world, up in the northern part of Europe. Over the years, it's sort of evolved into an alliance building exercise. And now it actually has this new salience as a way to show the solidarity of NATO and its new potential allies in Sweden and Finland against Russia's aggression that's renewed now against at least Ukraine and feared to be going up against the Baltic states in the future. So it's about building that alliance, and now it's actually showing some solidarity with these new countries.
Well, and describe the firepower of this ship, because it's quite mighty.
Yeah, the Kearsarge is what we call a large deck amphibious ship. So it's 1,000 feet long, about 40,000 tons, carries about 25 aircraft, as you said, almost 3,000, 2,500 sailors and Marines. It's capable of doing amphibious assaults using the hovercraft that you see on TV sometimes, and also helicopters and tilt rotors, the MV-22 Ospreys. So they can launch about 1,000 to 1,500 Marines ashore in relatively short order, as well as use their aircraft to launch strikes against targets deep inland.
Well, and it's not only the significance of the ship, but where this ship is located right now, Bryan. So talk about the Baltic Sea and why it is so strategically important to that region of the world.
Yeah, so the Baltic Sea is way up in the northern part of Europe. It's a very small area of water that's bounded by the Baltic states, so Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, and that's right next to Russia. And then on the opposite side of the Baltic Sea, you've got Sweden and Finland, and then Germany, and Poland. So you've got these NATO states right up against Russia. Russia has the ability to reach into the Baltic Sea very easily with its aircraft and missiles. So it's been kind of the cauldron, if you will. So it's going to be the main front of any future aggression between NATO and Russia, were it to come to pass. So it's really important that the U.S. and NATO have the ability to control that sea. And Finland, being the one with the largest coastline on the Baltic Sea, is really important to that.
Talk about how long these exercises will last, and will there be anything to develop out of them that would have any significance on the status of Russia's invasion of Ukraine? Does that play into where things stand more than 100 days into the war?
Not so much. I mean, so the exercise is going to last through the 17th of June. It's going to take place all around the Baltic Sea. They'll do a series of exercises, including amphibious assaults, and they'll practice doing anti-submarine warfare and mine warfare throughout the Baltic Sea. They'll end at Kiel, Germany, down at the southern end of the Baltic Sea in about a week and a half. But the main purpose of the exercise when it comes to Ukraine is to show Russia the solidarity of NATO in the Baltic Sea, and show that Russia doesn't have the ability to threaten those Baltic states, which are actually the NATO's most vulnerable front, because they are so small and they are so close up against Russia.
And it's also preparedness for Finland and Sweden, right, in the training exercises?
Absolutely. So Finland and Sweden have very strong militaries. So they're a net add or net benefit to NATO when they come in, as opposed to other countries that might come in and benefit from NATO's defense more than they provide. So Finland and Sweden are both going to lend a lot to NATO, and their capabilities are pretty complementary. But this is a way to start integrating them more tightly into NATO through exercises like BALTOPS. And they've participated before, but not really at the level they're going to participate this year.
You know, it stood out to me, General Mark Milley said mooring the ship in this particular spot is, quote, a pretty strong statement. What type of response do you think it will prompt from Russia? What do you anticipate is happening behind closed doors right now?
Well, Russia always, argues that BALTOPS is overly aggressive and provocative. That's sort of standard fare. I'm sure inside the decision-making, circles of Vladimir Putin, they're expressing concern that this is that the effort in Ukraine is actually tightening NATO's alliance, interrelationships. They're bringing on these new allies. They're going to be highly integrated. It's a problem for Russia going forward. So they might succeed to some degree in Ukraine, but they're really going to face a much stronger counter when it comes to that eastern front of NATO now as a result of this. And the Kearsarge being right there in Stockholm is really important. It's the first time a ship of that size has ever pulled into Stockholm, and it really demonstrates the fact that the U.S. can operate in that area alongside its NATO allies. So it's really important to show that ability to project power up into an area that I think Putin and Russia had largely thought that they could control from their own territory. And I think now they're realizing maybe that's not the case.
The exercises, the BALTOPS, go through June 17th, as you mentioned. Bryan Clark, appreciate your time as always. Good to see you. Thank you for watching. Go to NewsNationNow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.